we are here for you. As you know, the Voice and Viewpoint now in our 61st year, 89 zip codes in San Diego County, 17 cities and unincorporated areas. Available online free, but also available over the counter and in newsstands throughout the county. So, one of the big things that we're pushing at this point in the midst of this pandemic is that we have partnered with the County of San Diego since at least April with providing a double page printout of the health ordinances every week. And we give some 2,000 copies of those out at all of the feeding sites that we try to support. And we're encouraging people to pick those papers up because many of us are not online and many are not sitting around watching the press conferences. And we need to know, for instance, what's going to happen with rent control, what's happening with stay at home, what ordinances are going to affect us, what's happening now that we have the vaccines available and testing going on. And today we reached new numbers in terms of the number of deaths. The governor is now ordering additional body bags and mobile freezers for the body count that we're experiencing. People are dying in this country at the rate of 2 people every minute. Today, 3,304 people so far, and the infection rates are up. Our hospitals are at capacity in Northern California. Marin County no longer have any beds. Staff are burnt out and overloaded. The governor is trying to recruit additional health people from out of the country. We know that one of the places, for instance, has been the Philippines, where they always have a large school of nurses graduating, and many of them come here, work in our long-term care facilities before they get hired in hospitals and other places because they're not union, and so we got a lot of things on the plate, and we don't want to miss where we are, the real issues that we still have to confront from day-to-day survival, dealing with the police, dealing with neighbors, gun violence is up in the community, a number of things are happening. So I'm glad to be joined here this evening by Brother Dr. Leonard Thompson, and we're here to just share a number of things that we hope that you'll take an opportunity to call in and speak with us.
Well, Dr. Warren, good evening, and I didn't get to do it last week because we took a little break, but happy belated birthday. You have graced this world for how many years now?
75, 3/4 of a century. It's scary.
Man, they say, like I would say to my daughter, you have been on this earth over 7 decades.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and you are closer to that century mark, and that's a blessing because so many people can't say that they have made it thus far.
And so, my Bible says 10, so past that number, we living on grace. So
amen.
We're thankful.
Well, I just want to say that to you, and thank you for all that you do for the people that are in the way, working hard to make sure that we make a difference.
Yes.
There's so much going on, and so I kind of want to just first talk off about this face mask that you're wearing. I know that you are walking by example, so let's start off with, the coronavirus is real. So much stuff is going on, but let's talk about the face mask, and let's just then talk about this vaccine that's
well, the face mask is important because if you're not wearing goggles or glasses, it's possible if it's in the air to get into the eyes. And because the paper, we're making such a big point about people wearing covering, face covering, and the mask and shields. We use shields in the office. We've restricted access to the building so that because of the virus, we only have the people in there and they're wearing it. And so we're trying to lead by example. And it's so funny when you mentioned the shield. I was thinking the other day, I was in a store and these young men between 18 and about 22, we were in a long line waiting to cash out. And I don't usually go in a store. If I see a line, if I see a lot of people, I bypass, I wait till another time. And they kept easing up on me, and I had to finally turn around and say, you need to back up. You need the social distancing here. And you know, all four of them kind of looked at me. I said, you know, for you it's infection. It's an infection. I said, for me it's death. So y'all kind of back up. So they started kind of laughing and they backed up. And when one get too close, the other would say, hey, look, man, don't get up on that man there because you're going to kill him if you get up close to him. Okay. And so, but we want to keep the consciousness of it because that it's so insidious. You can't see it. You don't know it's there. And the losses are just coming right and left in terms of families and loved ones and people. And, of course, a lot of the people, they say, who are dying now from the Thanksgiving exposure, they felt that was a result of kids coming home from school and infecting parents and grandparents and the whole thing. So we're just trying to encourage people by example. These masks, I'm able to get, I think it's at Sam's Club, a box of 5 for $4.90 for $4. And, you know, we still use all of the things like we do here in the studio with the Lysol and the wipes and everything that we do. But trying to lead by example in terms of showing people what we should do and don't feel bad about wearing it.
So let me just go into it right now. So I got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about Biden's picks, but I'm gonna start off with the vaccine. They rolling out the vaccine. Are you in line to get your shot?
Well, you know, according to all their statistics, I'm in the high-risk group. And if offered the vaccine, I certainly will take it. I don't have a problem with taking it at all. And I know we've been tested many times. We sort of had a feeling that maybe my wife and I had a touch of this back in January before they identified it because of some things that happened. But no, I will take the vaccine, and I encourage others to do so if we get an opportunity.
Yeah. You know, I'm always trying to figure out which one they're going to give. I don't know if, you know, I'm leaning towards the Moderna vaccine versus the one that got to be under all this cold thing. Because, you know, I'm like saying they got to thaw it out. And what if you know how if you thaw it out wrong, it spoils?
Yeah, but you won't have a choice because a lot of people are asking that question today.
Okay.
And the need is so great that they're going to be pushing out both of them and they won't be able to. One doctor in Baltimore, a former health commissioner, her concern was that we can't have a situation where wealthy people with a lot of money sidetrack the people who are in need and can't afford to buy it, because you know that's going to always happen.
Yeah.
You're going to always have these people looking to do that. And I was watching this doctor this evening who was picking up the vaccine. He was, I think he was in Michigan or some rural area, and they were putting it in his truck, and he had a 2-hour drive back to the rural community that he serviced to start implementing it. And the first thought I had was, anyone moving that vaccine, they should have some kind of security with them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I was thinking he had a 2-hour drive. If something happens to him along the road, those people lose that vaccine. And, you know, it could be that someone's going to try to steal and do black market because that's just the nature of the debaseness that we have in the society as a whole. So I think we need to be real serious, and if we have an opportunity, not only the first shot, but it is critical to go back for the second shot, because if people only take one and they don't take the second one, they will allow that virus an opportunity to mutate. And the next thing you know will be like tuberculosis that's penicillin resistant, and it'll be we have to start all over looking for something because it won't work.
So let me ask you this question: how fast people are going to be getting the shots and everything like that? How fast do you think that we should open up the economy?
You know what? I don't think we can put the economy on the same scale with the vaccine, because one of the things I believe is that more people are going to die because the vaccine is there, because they're going to have a false sense that now the issue is over, and it's not. They're not going to reach 60 or 70% of inoculation in the country before maybe July or August or something. So the economy, the bill that they're going to pass this week, and they will pass one now, will be a holdover. And we believe that once the inauguration takes place and the Biden team is in place, we will get additional stimulus, because he's concerned about doing both things, a national attitude toward it plus reopening.
So, so at this point, you would say that if you were offered the vaccine, you would take it. The conspiracy theories that people of color won't get the right vaccine, how do we protect ourselves from that going into this where everybody's going to have to be vaccinated?
Well, you know what? It might sound self-serving, but I always remind people that the census uses a term called a trusted messenger. And we're experiencing now a situation where people are finally realizing that you cannot believe everything that you see on social media, because social media still has Donald Trump winning the election in spite of everything else that's been done, and creating a risk. So I think that we need to listen, pay attention, don't follow rumors. I believe that our papers around the country we're in negotiations with CDC in terms of being a trusted messenger, because after 193 years of publication, the African American community does have trust in terms of our papers, and we're not going to be running stuff for the sake of money. So we've been in discussions with CDC, and I've been on the meetings for probably the past 6 to 8 weeks in preparing for this. And so I think that if we pay attention and don't be frivolous as we are about a lot of things, it'll make a difference.
Do we feel that the vaccine has been tested enough on people of color to know if it has a strong outcome?
Well, that's the missing question, because I remember Reverend Harris was asking to see the data in terms of local participation, in terms of who, and it's a difficult thing because, first of all, many of us do not volunteer to be a part of experiments and studies, so we don't know what that scenario is. And we do know that it appears that the FDA is using the same kind of rigid standards to look at it and not being swayed by the politics of getting the second vaccine out. So we don't know what the effects are going to be, because we're going to be getting reports as people are taking it. Like one person took the vaccine today and they had an allergy reaction, but they were able to deal with it. And you know, many of us have reactions from getting the flu shot, and so it's not going to be a super pill for everything. We're just going to have to learn as we go.
So they also are now starting to say that they are going to do some vaccination of young people. And so there's also a rush to say, how quickly can we reopen schools? What's your thought on that?
I don't think that we'll get the school reopening scenario until after we get the new president in place. And, separate from the inauguration, so much hangs on what happens January 5th in terms of the Georgia runoff for those 2 Senate seats. Because if we win those 2 Senate seats, then we will have control of the Democratic Party, the White House, the Congress, and the Senate. If we don't win those seats, Mitch McConnell will still be in control of the Senate, and he will do to Biden what he did to Obama for 8 years, what he's done to the rest of America for the past 9 months in terms of holding up relief, knowing that people are dying, and just being insensitive and not caring.
So a lot of things is right now resting on how effective the vaccine is going to be. I think for the healthcare workers who are getting it, one of the doctors I saw this morning said, now I know I won't die from this. You know what I'm saying? And feeling very confident that there was a first line of defense that it would begin to protect them. I know personally that COVID has affected our family, from people that have gotten COVID and have lost their life in our family, some that have gotten COVID and have recuperated. I actually got a text today from my aunt who said that both her and my uncle got COVID, and then they recovered, and then he got it again. Yeah. And so now he's on oxygen and everything else.
And it could be months.
Yeah. So the question came in is that as life as we know it, is it changed forever? I posed this question because I said that the mask will no longer be just because of that. The mask has become a fashion statement, and it will be here even after the pandemic is over.
Well, I was talking about this today with my wife, and then when they announced what they were getting ready to order, I said, it comes down to the mask or the bag.
Yeah.
You either get the mask or we get the body bag, because the healthcare workers, and we've lost 1,700 at least, a minimum healthcare workers nationally to this virus, a whole bunch of doctors and nurses, people who put their lives at risk to care for folks. And we need to understand something that they've said, many of them, about the number of people that they've held their hands as they were dying, and they were saying, oh, gee, I thought it was a hoax. I didn't take it for real.
Yeah.
And the scripture says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so we got to be serious about this. We got to look at the fact it's not over. Christmas is here. And Christmas has always been a very interesting scenario, because those of us who are people of faith know that Christmas is about Christ and about the gift, okay? And the gift, when I think of his gift, I think of John 3:16, for he so loved the world that he gave. And so it is a spirit of giving. And of course, Coca-Cola brought Santa Claus to us to take the place of Jesus. And so now everybody started looking at the little fat guy in the suit. But now we're going to be forced to back up, because we can't get together for all of those things if we want to live. We were saying before Thanksgiving, better to Zoom Thanksgiving than to be in ICU for Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, now there's not going to be any room in ICU next week for Christmas.
Yeah.
And so, and we know that Christmas is a time of greatest depression among people for a whole bunch of reasons. And so we're just going to have to, I think those of us who are well mentally, physically, can get on the phone and on Zoom, and we can find folks to talk to and reach out to, and to help them through this, because it doesn't have to be the end.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna change, because some people say that we do COVID, and they says COVID is really getting to them, because we start off our day. I don't know about you, but I turn on the news, and the first at the top of the story, Donald Trump and COVID.
Yeah.
Those are the two tops. So I want to get down to the cabinet picks with Joe Biden.
Oh, yeah.
Now I actually put it up so we can look at some of them, and we can start talking about these cabinet picks right here. The latest one,
Yes.
how you say his name?
His name is Buttigieg, and I just...
Okay, let me get you close to it. So, okay.
Buttigieg, yes.
And so he has him as transportation secretary.
And I think so far that represents a good pick. If you look at his background, you look at his age. Yes, he's young. I think he made friends with both Biden and Harris during the time that he was on the trail with them running for president. And even though he was a mayor in Indiana, he still had, and he was in the military, and he was former intelligence officer, but he has a history and an interest in transportation that is kind of unique. And so I think he's going to end up being a good pick, and I was impressed with the extent to which the president-elect expressed concern about our infrastructure and about the number of bridges that we have and roads that are unsafe and the things that were happening. And I don't think a lot of people know that, America is in a funny scenario. We have the interstate system because of the late President Eisenhower. And Eisenhower, long before he became a general, he did something before we had interstate. He took a military convoy from the East Coast to the West Coast and tracked what they went through in terms of little side streets and roads and the whole scenario. And this was before World War II. And this is why when we got into World War II, he saw what the Hitler was doing with the Panther Division in terms of trying to move and the road system. So he came back and built this interstate system that we have today. On the other hand, if you look at Europe, if you look at Japan, if you look over there, you see bullet trains. And we should have had bullet trains decades ago to go from east to west. But we were so busy lining the airlines and having to buy up the rail system in terms of that we didn't think any further. So I think that Buttigieg is going to be a welcome thing, and he's going to be a part of that millennial bridge between Biden's age and the younger element that's coming along.
So let me ask you about even like the thing like the bullet train. I always thought the bullet train didn't go forth because they could not get it to be safe.
Well, no, that was in California where we had arguments over the bullet train. But you got to remember that it was only about 30 years ago, maybe 40, that we naturalized the railroads and we created Amtrak as an independent corporation, the same as the postal system. And that's because things were going downhill in terms of the train system being in trouble. And we still, because we had a collection of individually owned railroads. Okay. For
like
East,
monopoly.
Yeah. And the different people. No, it wasn't even a monopoly because.
No, I'm saying monopoly. They have you could buy a railroad in the game.
Well, but sometimes you have to stop me because I start being a history scenario here. But you got to remember that the United States put a lot of money into getting the railroad system built, and they did so much that to this day, railroad workers have a separate retirement. There's a Railroad Retirement Act, there's a Longshoreman Retirement Act, and then there's a public service retirement in terms of all those things that were sweetening the pie according to what the need was. Okay, and so this is coming to play again, I think. We're going to go back looking at it because people are not ready to jump back on planes to the extent that they were. And really, the pandemic brought the airline back to reality.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, they were messing over people. The seats were getting smaller. You were paying for everything except the bathroom and a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, and now they've lost 70% of their business.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different.
All right. Secretary of State, Anthony.
Some disappointment there. Many of us had hoped that Susan Rice would become Secretary of State since she had been ambassador to the UN. But this guy seems to be qualified. And so I wouldn't fight over him. I wouldn't fight over Janet Yellen. I think that's significant. It's a shame that we're talking about someone like that as a first. How about the fact that first, Yellen is qualified in terms of running Treasury? I mean, she was former chair of the Federal Reserve. You can't get more into the money than that, unless you were Alexander Hamilton, and we know about that. I'm excited about the Defense Secretary, Lord Austin, four-star general. Most people don't know that we only have 6 four-star generals in the military at this point. And that was kind of interesting because some of the four-star generals that stand out in our mind, they're no longer there, like Colin Powell, who came out of ROTC and became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff twice, which is very significant. But he might have come out of ROTC, but in Vietnam, he distinguished himself. He was a platoon leader. He was a ranger, and he saw combat and all of that.
But hold on. You got to break it down because you talked about four-star general. Is that the highest?
The four-star general is the highest that you can go in the military. Okay, and once you become a four-star general, the only thing that gets higher than that is being on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and getting to be chairman, because the highest ranking general from each of the divisions, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they all they make up the Joint Chiefs. And then the Joint Chiefs report directly to the President as Commander-in-Chief. Okay. And so we had historical people, Colin Powell, Chappie James, who was the first four-star general for the Air Force, Benjamin O. Davis Sr., first general for the military, and then his son became a general who headed up the Tuskegee Airmen. And so we have other generals because there was a time that the highest ranking black man in the military, even though we had been to West Point, was Charles Young, who made it all the way up to becoming a colonel. And for many days, even in my recent lifetime and military career, there were black officers who weren't going to get higher than being a colonel, okay, because they just kept the general thing locked down. So I think that it's not a question of his qualifications. The question is, can he overcome the 7-year requirement between retirement and taking on a civil position that was set up to keep the military from taking too big a role. And we got that done for the one that Trump did, Mad Dog.
Yeah, Mad Dog.
Yeah, he got through. And some are talking about they don't want to let this man through, but they should, because we really need that. And everything suggests that he's able to make the balance.
Okay. Agriculture Secretary.
I think that was a good choice because this person is coming back to a position that they held before. They know USDA. USDA is a unique place, and we don't need the USDA to go back to, I can't remember the idiot's name that came from Alaska years ago, but he really messed over. Black farmers have been getting screwed just in terms of help and the way things have run there. And all kinds of deals have been made for white farmers in terms of subsidies, and Trump giving out a few $1 billion to them because he had interrupted the flow of the relationship with China. So that's going to work. Health and Human Services is very interesting because here he has taken Becerra, who is currently the Attorney General for California. But evidently, his credentials in terms of management leave them with some sense of security that he will be a good choice. I'm not too much on housing. Marcia Fudge, I believe is a sister, is it? Yes.
Yeah.
Second black woman.
But before you go there, I want to ask the question.
Right.
Because isn't this the same position that Dr. Carson has?
Yeah, Carson has a position, but you know, there's always this question, does the man make the position or does the position make the man? Yeah. Ben Carson didn't do anything in the position. He should have never taken it. He should have been, with his medical background, he should have been head of Health and Human Services. And it was really an insult to do that, you know. And America has this way of insulting us. It's just like you put a Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court behind a Thurgood Marshall. You know, you take the most do-nothing person you can find to try to muddy and erase the reputation of the one person that came before them that did something. And so they say she's the second woman to help HUD. A lot of people don't remember, but Patricia Roberts Harris, a lawyer, ambassador to Luxembourg at the time, a teacher at Howard University School of Law, she was the first woman to head up housing and urban development, the first African American as well. And she did an outstanding job. And there's a lot to be done at HUD because right now there are a lot of things that are working against us as a people in terms of housing. Trump tried to cut Section 8 and all of the assistance programs. And so there's a rebuilding of the nation that has to take place. The Homeland Security, and I'm going to jump back up to Vet Affairs, but first time we've had a Latina in that position, and he's a person who knows something about what they're dealing with. I think he's, although he's a Cuban-born lawyer and Latino, we need to not stereotype because so many times people were talking about Cubans and the Latino support for Trump in Florida. But the Cubans in Florida are not the same Latinos as the Mexican or Chicanos because of the difference in culture and the way they come. So I think that he is going to bring a sensitivity to the whole immigration issue. He's going to really deal with DACA and make that work. And I think the choice for Veteran Affairs is a good one. And so some of these people are recycled from
but
Obama.
I want to ask.
Yeah.
So we actually have a Latino that's going to head up Homeland Security.
Yes.
Does that mean that the border wall is going to be built,
no.
or no?
Well, let's not. I would say let's not be racist in terms of the wall and him, okay? Because the Biden has already made it clear that he's not in support of the wall in terms of what Trump's doing, and a lot of scandal has come up with the wall so far. In terms of money that was raised and misused and people getting ready to go to jail. What's his name who was with Trump at first and he had to fire him? The far right, his name
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but I don't see that. I don't see the wall continuing because it was never felt there was a need for the wall because of the sophistication of security that we had. And the wall has really wreaked havoc in places like Texas and New Mexico, private land, wildlife. You know, the wall is really 1,700 miles long in terms of dividing. And it always struck me as strange when I first came here that I was able to, 30 years ago, I was able to go down to the border where the wall is, where the fence is. And in those days, you could go so far out in the water and just walk around and come up in Mexico. And my wife and I did it a couple of times, and you can just walk down the beach. You know, of course, now things have tightened up, but it was also a place where this was during the day. In the evening, you saw people gathering there, and then you would see the patrol, border patrol, come out because it was under cover of darkness that people would try to come over. And so that's going to be an interesting scenario with all of this going on at one time, especially when we look at the homeland and the fact that we found that we have a lot of information on those kids that they withheld it all this time. They had numbers and ways of reaching parents, and they didn't. And so we're going to have to watch closely. But the big advantage is going to be for the dreamers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Who else there? You got
So Veteran Affairs.
Veteran Affairs. I think Trump lied so much about Veteran Affairs, but this guy who is taking that over, Dennis McDougal, he spent his early career, it said, on foreign affairs, and he advised Obama in terms of foreign policy, and he was a deputy national security advisor. And I think that that he's going to do a good job. I'm trying to remember the brother's name who was there under Clinton. His last name was Brown, and he had been a disabled American veteran, and he spent a lot of time in San Diego. I spent a lot of time with him here. He took a personal interest in cases and trying to reach people and work with folks. And so the Obama and he and his wife both expressed concern trying to help veterans. I think we're going to get some more realistic assistance at this point.
Okay, so I want to find out what I'm interested in: the ambassador to the UN or the United Nations and the United States Trade Representative. Those two positions.
Yeah, well, for what do we have? The United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield. I don't know a lot about her. She's black, and she was a diplomat for Obama on Africa from 2013 to 2017. So that means that she's not going in there trying to learn. The first black that we had as an ambassador to the United Nations was Georgia.
Andrew Young?
Andrew Young, yes. All these names popping up. And it was significant when Andrew Young became ambassador because he began to open doors, and we began to find that a lot of African nations wanted to do business with black business people, but those doors have been mainly blocked by whites who were holding down those positions. So I think that it's going to be important for our relationship with Africa, especially after Trump referred to so many of those nations as S-hole countries. And the other thing that we are not keeping an eye on, that during these years that Trump has neglected Africa, China has been pouring money into Africa and to its infrastructure in terms of building roads, bridges, dams, because as it was recently found out, and they looked at it, is that China intends to dominate the world economically, politically, militarily, and so they're going in every place that we backed off and didn't go in, making friends and putting money, because they think long term in terms of longevity. Yeah, and we all try to do everything in a hurry.
Okay. Surprise for me was Susan Rice.
Yes. And there's got to be something else going on there, and we don't know exactly what it is. We know that, she's been at that level both in terms of Clinton and Obama, and we know that the White House Domestic Policy Council is important. And so we don't know. And Susan's kind of interesting because she was born in D.C. She was educated at Stanford on the West Coast. She married a Canadian, yet she's still here. And so we don't know something. And you saw pictures of her so many times, like when Osama bin Laden was killed. You would see her in those briefing sessions. She would sit next to Biden at the table, next to the vice president with the cabinet. And so we know that they're well known, but we don't know if there were chemistry issues. But she said that she would serve wherever called upon. And I think that that's going to make a big difference.
So explain to me the office position, the White House Domestic Policy Council Director. What is that? What does that position really entail?
Well, I've never spent a lot of time on that position, even coming from Washington and from the Hill. But it's my understanding, we have foreign policy, as we see the State Department, and we have to have a domestic policy. And when we say domestic, then that covers what are the things that we're doing here. For instance, the Economic Opportunity Act, unemployment, trade adjustment assistance, where we train people because industry shut down. We're looking at what things are impacting us. We got an issue going right now with oil. We have people fracking. We have America with developing a surplus of oil and gas, which is driving the price down and making it difficult for small private businesses. And so I would imagine that all of these things that go to make up our GNP and how we function domestically I'll be the things that the Policy Council would be looking at. And that would be the American equivalent to the Council on Foreign Relations, which would be looking at how we're doing with other people in other places.
So who do you think will get Attorney General?
I think there are about two people stand out in my mind as being really important. One is Sally, I can't think of her name.
Yates.
That was fired by Trump.
Yeah.
Is her name
Right
up
there.
there?
Yes, right there on the Attorney General. See, right here.
Oh, yeah, Sally Yates, okay. But the other person that's not listed there, and I'm surprised he's not there, should be Deval Patrick. Because Deval Patrick is black. He's a former governor of Massachusetts. He's a sharp attorney. He was one of those people that have been looked at as another Obama in terms of running for the presidency. And so I think that with all of the civil rights issues that we've had, and the absence and the need for the new Civil Rights Voting Rights Act that we need, that it should be something that we would do in terms of putting a black person in that position. And we've got the African Americans who are pressuring the president-elect to remind him that you wouldn't be there without us. And we want to make sure that happens. Now, what is not on this list here so far, and I want to mention it because there's discussion of our own Dr. Shirley Weber being under consideration for Secretary of Education. And you will notice that when the Electoral College did its vote the other day, and they reported state by state in the legislature, Dr. Weber was the person chairing the Electoral College in California and casting the votes for us. And so while some people mention her name along with Karen Bass and Barbara Lee to replace Kamala Harris in the Senate, they say that there's serious discussion about Dr. Weber for Secretary of Education. I think if that happened, that would be a very significant move. There have been few black women that I've seen in education who have distinguished themselves and who would be able to make a profound difference. And she reminds me of one Dr. Deborah Wolf, who laid out all of the education things that we have today that passed under Powell when he was chairman of Education and Labor. So that could be a good move. The Center for Disease Control move that we have up there, I believe that this doctor comes with such outstanding credentials and national support in the healthcare industry that people are just excited about the idea of her being there. And she's a professor of medicine at the Harvard Medical School, but she distinguished herself a long time ago in terms of concern about health care for other people.
So basically, he's building out his cabinet, and there's so many other positions that are there. But right now, really, the success of these cabinet going through is all hinged on Georgia.
Well, it does hinge on Georgia because if we are successful in Georgia with Oslo and Warnock getting elected, that would be bringing two more Democratic senators. That would make the Senate have 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats. And the vice president is President pro tem of the Senate. And so she would be the tiebreaker where Pence is now, and we can't even get there. So I think that would be very significant because without that happening, we have a risk that McConnell will try to hold on to power and leadership in the Senate. And he certainly is not concerned about the rest of America or the programs or the things that we should be doing. He's got a solitary agenda for him to sit back and watch people die. And he's held up a CARES bill for months that's been on the desk in the Senate. He determines as the majority leader what the agenda is, what goes for. He's the one that protected Trump through the impeachment. And so he's just been a hindrance all the way around. And so we really, they've already started voting. Black people are voting in Georgia. Fortunately, the Trump supporters are confused because on the one hand, Trump and Giuliani been going down there telling people the election was a fraud. And so now they want to tell them to vote. And in reality, one of the biggest concerns right there is that Trump's going to try to maintain a shadow government. When he goes out of office, if he can still gender publicity and stuff, he's going to be working against the administration. We already saw two things happen that were disastrous. Last week in D.C., his supporters attacked a black church, tore down a sign and burned it. A mayor had to resign as recently as yesterday or today in one of our cities because of threats being made against her by Trump supporters. And so we will not maintain two Americas, and we won't have two presidents. And so we gotta really look at this situation in terms of dealing with it.
So that's my question. Everything that this president is currently doing is very unorthodox, is just downright disrespectful. How long do we allow, how long can the disrespect go forth, and when does it become a criminal action?
Well, that's a very good question because now there's some discussion as to whether or not he's going to leave the White House voluntarily after the inauguration. I predict that this is what Trump's going to do since he's concerned about the legality of pardoning himself and he wants to pardon his family members. The only way I can see Trump pulling this off is for him to resign the presidency, say about 48 hours before the inauguration, have an agreement with Pence when he's sworn in.
So Pence would then become the 46th president.
He would become the
46th president.
46th president for 48 hours. During that time, Pence could sign all of the pardons for Trump himself and his family, the same way Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon. Mm-hmm. And he would get his pardon without raising a constitutional question. But the pardon would only extend to any federal crimes because the pardon won't help him in New York in terms of what they're after him for up there, his foundation, his kids. It won't help them with it. And he's worried about his kids being pardoned because he knows that his daughter and son are under investigation along with other people for how they handled the inauguration and the monies that they funneled through the Trump Hotel there in Washington, which smacks against the emolument clause in the Constitution. So we got a whole bunch of issues that are at work here. And it's a really scary set of days coming up.
My question is, do you really think that Pence will allow himself to be used as a pawn in the last 2 days?
You can't tell about Pence. I believe that if Pence is asked to do something that's going to benefit Trump, I think that Pence will go for it. And the reason I think that he'll go for it is because I believe that Pence wants to be president, and by being quiet and being the extension, he can eventually become the poster person. Because I'm pretty sure at some point Trump's probably going to end up going to jail, and he's going to go so close to jail that there are going to be some other issues come. Let's take a case in point. You have the Homeland Security Committee of the U.S. Senate today holding a 4-hour hearing on whether or not there was fraud in an election when no state has found fraud. The Supreme Court has turned it down. Every court has turned down what they brought up. And in the midst of all of this taking place, you're not dealing with the fact that we just found that Russia has been hacking the very Homeland Security Agency itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a difference. I see we got two people up here, two pictures that, and locally turning our attention in this direction. We had Jen Campbell becoming city council president despite protests, and Monica Montgomery, District 4. I know she wanted to be president of the council, and supporters of her launched a real campaign. Some of it was questionable in terms of their behavior and the things that they did. There were people up to at least 100 at one point waiting in the queue to call in during the council debate over this before the vote occurred. But we see at the end of the day, Jen Campbell became president of the city council.
So my question is, because at the end of the day, there was a lot of voice of support for council member Montgomery Stepp, but it seemed to not sway not one council person. So my question is, who were the 5 that voted against her?
Well, I haven't looked at the 5 closely, but I do know this, that new council members coming in, there was some of the existing members felt that there was an arrogance, that their minds were made up, and I haven't been close to them or the issue of what was taking place with the council. We know now that we have, for the first time, we have a Democratic controlled city council along with a Democratic mayor. Mm-hmm. And this is something that a lot of people were afraid of when Bob Filner became mayor, because he was the first Democrat to become a mayor in a very long time. Mm-hmm. And we know that because before Filner got into his personal issues with women and allegations, that Jerry Sanders, who had been mayor, went to the regional chamber as president, and he was intended to be the mayor in exile for the Republican element. And so we're going to see what happens here. We got a young mayor. I've been impressed with Todd Gloria's grasp for the issues and priorities. He said we're going to find money for the people who are in the convention center, because no one should be put out in the midst of this pandemic and this weather. He's looking at all of the issues that are on the table, looking at the whole issue of what's happened with gas and the monopoly and all that. So I think it's going to be a progressive relationship down there. And I do see that Monica Montgomery Stepp retained the chairmanship of public safety in livable neighborhoods.
Okay.
And so I think that's a good thing. And we know that we have the measure that created the new commission on the police policy and practices, with the subpoena powers that dissolved the old citizen review board that was stacked with the internal affairs and all of the wrong interests. So it will be an interesting time.
Do you feel that in San Diego especially, that the current city leadership will truly recognize the impact for African Americans?
Not necessarily. We're still evolving on that issue, not only here, but also in the surrounding cities. We're evolving because of a law, a change and a threat of litigation about 3 years ago that encouraged places like National City, Chula Vista, La Mesa, El Cajon, to go to district elections so that they could have more diversity because there were chances of litigation coming in terms of ethnic communities not being represented. What we need to keep an eye on right now going forth, Dr. Thompson, is that we now have commissions on redistricting, both for the county and the city. And the people who ended up being appointed to those were selected by that panel of retired white judges who we got to watch in terms of how things are structured. The last time we did redistricting, we ended up with a 9th district, which should have been an at-large district, and the numbers should have been different. But there was an effort to take the Mira Mesa area and create an Asian district, and we didn't need to go into dividing the community up in terms of that ethnic thing, returning to a system that didn't work. So I think a lot of it is going to be how involved do we get now that we have, it's still about jobs, the number of jobs that have been lost, the people that we're feeding every day. Thousands now are in the lines for food and assistance. And the biggest crisis coming for us, unless something really different happens, and I haven't looked at the latest health directive yet, December 31st, in terms of these landlords rushing into court to file the eviction notices. And the evictions would do a surge in terms of homelessness, and the evictions were something that CDC used its power to stop because they looked at evictions as a means of spreading the virus. So we got some challenges, and all of them haven't been addressed yet.
And one of the things that is sad about evictions, especially if you have had a good tenant, I always tell people that many times when you evict somebody, it normally takes you 3 to 6 months to refill that space, be it in business or even in an apartment, because you have to spend the first month or so refurbishing whatever you have.
Well, yes, in a sense, but there's an issue bigger than that now coming up because the San Diego Apartment Association usually screens out people who have evictions on their record when they do the public record check. And once all these people are put out and all these people have been without jobs and stuff, we're going to have a whole bunch of folks who won't qualify for housing. And they're going to still have a need for money. So the question is, what are they going to do? And that's going to be a real issue. So I know we covered a lot, Brother Thompson.
Yeah. And one of the things that, and I want to say this to one of the experiences that I had is that I feel like that we in this season have to have compassion, and there's so many people that are in need. Take the time out of your busy schedule to just lend a helping hand wherever you can, be it at a food bank. I ran into a homeless person on this morning, and there was one part of me that says you're trespassing. The other part of me said, would you like a cup of coffee?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And we've got to have that kind of humanity, and that spirit will make a difference.
Well, Dr. Warren, we're almost to the end of the year.
Yes, we are.
We will be doing an end of the year kind of in review very, very soon. So many great things that are going to be happening with the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint, not just the gala, but I'm looking forward to some of the new features and some of the things that are going to be coming up this year in 2021 with the Voice and Viewpoint. I think is going to be amazing.
And I'm looking forward to it, and we're going to keep on pushing on.
All right. This is from the desk of the editor.